All right, today the ethicist I want to roll out for you is named Immanuel Kant. And Immanuel, of course, means God with us. So what a great name, God with us, Kant. And he's living in the 18th century. A lot of his writing, like what I'm going to share with you today, was written about the time of the American Revolution. So like the later 1700s. And Kant wants an ethical theory that is purely coming from reason. And he has a really interesting critique of all ethical theories that have come before him. He claims that all these other ethical theories we've discussed so far are external. It's either God or society trying to impose upon us the right way to live. And rewards are offered for behavior that complies, and punishments are given for those who rebel and don't follow the dictates, the moral dictates or commands. And Kant claimed that the problem with this sort of external morality is it turns the individual into a moral mercenary, where we will give our allegiance or act in accordance with who we think is going to give us the biggest payoff. And for Kant, this isn't ethical at all, and I totally agree with him. It's like heaven for good people, hell for bad people. We give people treats for good behavior and smacks with the ruler for bad behavior. And Kant's like, no, we need something that's coming from within and that is reason-based. Because when people base it on God or authority or culture, it's going to get twisted and perverted along the way, where Kant had a very high view of human reason. In fact, he wrote the book called The Critique of Pure Reason, which is a massive volume, and then its companion volume is called The Critique of Practical Reason. And there's going to be three main parts to Kant's theory. And the first part starts with his proclamation that the only thing that is good in and of itself is pure practical reason. Any other good you may have, like beauty, intelligence, strength, are not good in and of themselves, because beauty could be used to entice or deceive. Intelligence could be used to construct even more elaborate evil plans. And strength could be used to either help and protect or to harm others. But a pure practical reason, Kant believes, is good across the board in and of itself. But this is where Kant is very difficult, because what I may think, the only thing I got ahead of myself, the only thing good in and of itself is a good will. But Kant believed a good will is pure practical reason. Not how we would normally think of goodwill, right? I would think of goodwill more in terms of good intentions towards others, having a good disposition towards other people. But for Kant, a goodwill, which is the only good in and of itself, is pure practical reason. And like I said, he wrote a volume on what that looks like. Now, in addition to having pure practical reason or goodwill, Kant rules out what's called the categorical imperative. And I'm going to say this slowly. I'm sorry I can't write it on the whiteboard for you. But the categorical imperative, first I'm going to give it to you in Kantian language, and then I'll give it to you in a more contemporary American vernacular. So Kant says, to will that your maxim be made a universal law. Let me say that one more time. To will that your maxim be made a universal law. Now, your maxim is your actions. So are you willing that your actions, here's Fred in the vernacular, do you want all people in all places at all times, that's the universal part, all people, all places, all times, to do, that's the maxim part, to do what you're about to do. So if I'm sitting at a red light, I can ask myself, would I want all people in all places at all times to run red lights? Well, the answer is obviously no, because it would make traffic laws meaningless and it would be chaos on the roads. What about would I want all people in all places at all times to lie if it helped get them out of trouble? Well, of course not, because that would make truth telling meaningless. If I knew everyone was going to universally lie if they thought it would be a benefit to them. Would I want all people, all place, at all times that are hungry to steal food to satisfy their hunger? Well, of course not, because then private property would become meaningless if people could steal whenever they felt that they were in need or want. Now, we could make all sorts of exceptions individually of anything from traffic lights to stealing. Like I could say, yeah, but what if I need to steal in order to feed my starving family and I don't have enough money for medicine? Would it be okay for me to steal to provide my family with medicine? Kant would say, yeah, on an individual basis, we could come up with all kinds of reasons why we should be able to do things. But the key to living a moral life is to universalize your dilemma and to think, how would you feel if other people were going to do the same thing you're about to do? In a sense, Kant is giving us sort of a intellectual version of the golden rule, which was rolled out by Jesus, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, or by Confucius, who says, don't do unto others as you wouldn't have others do unto you. And so we could have it in the negative or the positive, but Kant is saying, do you want all people in all places at all times to do what you're about to do? Now, this only applies to ethical issues. This is not about a matter of taste or preference. So if I go to Baskin Robbins and I'm trying to figure out which of the 31 flavors I want, I don't have to ask myself, would I want all people in all places, all times to choose praline and cream over chocolate chip? It's not an ethical decision. It's a matter of personal preference or taste. And we'll discuss that later after I do the 15-minute version. These are called hypothetical imperatives. So for example, if you want to get an A in this class, you're going to have to attend a certain amount of times, you're going to have to get a certain score on your quizzes, and you're going to have to fulfill the other requirements I have asked of you and get A-level grades in those endeavors. It doesn't mean if you even fail this course that you're an immoral or unethical person. It's simply if you want to get and you could get an A in this class and be the most immoral person in this class. What Paul is saying, what Kant is saying is you have to, if in order to get a certain thing, that is the hypothetical imperative. But the one we're using for ethics and morality is the categorical imperative, which is universal to all people at all times. All right. And now the third and final movement of Kant's ethic is called the kingdom of ends. And the kingdom of ends states, always treat others as an end unto themselves, never as merely a means to an end. I'll say that one more time slowly. The kingdom of ends states, always treat others as an end unto themselves, never as merely a means to an end. And the way I would put this one in the vernacular is, don't use people. And I don't know about you all, but the greatest psychic scars I have, things that still make the hair stand up on the back of my neck, is when I think of those times in my past where I have used other people. There is something incredibly morally damaging and repugnant about that. And Kant is saying, treat each individual as an end unto themselves. Don't use other people for your benefit or what you hope to get out of them. And man, if we could just apply the kingdom of ends, think how much better this world would be if we stopped using each other or objectifying other people. And since I got a couple minutes left in this mini version, I want to go big for a second. Kant is looking for universals. He grew up in kind of a holy roller version of Christianity in the 18th century in Germany. And, you know, it was the jump and shout crowd. They saw a demon or an angel behind every bush. They were on an emotional roller coaster. When things were going well, God loved you. And then when things went bad, God was punishing you, or the devil was out to get you. And it was just like this emotional ride that Kant, either because of his temperament or his mind or his affinity towards reason, did not want to live that way. So he was trying to come up with an ethical theory that was based on reason, not on the flights of our passions or our emotions. And Kant believed that anyone, even a child, could reason correctly. And let me give you one quick example of my own life. Just as my father was an Aristotelian, and I didn't know it because I was just a kid. I didn't know about these theories. My mother was a Kantian. And we, at, when I was a young man, we lived in the central coast of California near Morro Bay. And there's this old volcanic dome that's sitting there half in and half out of the water at Morro Bay. And there's a state beach there. And I had never seen so many live sand dollars in my life. In fact, it was where I found my first live sand dollar as a child. I would usually find them dried out or broken and white, but this particular day, there were hundreds of sand dollars, maybe thousands spread across the beach. And I had my little bucket, and was collecting sand dollars, and it was time to go home. And my mama, she didn't say, put those back. Can't you read the signs? This is a protected beach. Or do you want me to get a fine? Or she didn't try to bribe me by saying, hey, if you put those sand dollars back, we'll stop by and I'll get you an ice cream instead. She simply reasoned with me. Even as a small child, she asked me a simple question. She said, beautiful son of mine, what would happen if every little boy with his precious sand dollars he found took them home with him and didn't leave them here on the beach? And even as a child, it just took me a few moments to realize that in a matter of time, there wouldn't be any sand dollars left. They all would be taken home by some little boy and drawing on their shelf. And so without being told, being threatened or bribed, of my own volition, I went and put those sand dollars back on the beach. And just 2 years ago, I got to go on a trip with my mother back to that same beach. And I was so excited because I hadn't been there since. And I was wondering about the sand dollars. And when we got to the beach, there were thousands upon thousands of sand dollars on the beach. And I think in a very real sense, those sand dollars have my mother and Kant to thank for their existence today. And how that simple question, what would happen if everyone did what I as a little boy was about to do, resonated so strongly with me. So I hope this was a helpful overview for you of the Kantian ethical theory, and in class we'll critique it and talk about its strengths and weaknesses. You can watch my full-length video if you want to see that in my other playlist.